Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Mr. Vice President, I'm going off script again, I know, but I just want to personally thank you. We've been through some stuff. We've gone through some of the most complex military operations this country's ever conducted, and your steady hand and your leadership during those was a great source of strength for me. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your character. Thank you for your selfless service. Thank you for commitment. Thank you for being a mentor to me, Mr. Vice President.
It's called the swamp. And you know what happened? And you know what I did? A big favor. I caught the swamp. I caught them all. Let's see what happens. Nobody else could have done that but me. I caught all of this corruption that was going on, and nobody else could have done it. Did I get that one right? Every 4 years, we gather on these steps to carry out the orderly and peaceful transfer of power. Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government, while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now. The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first.
This is a president of the United States who is a danger to the republic.
America first.
He knows he's an illegitimate president.
The oath of office I take today is an oath of allegiance to all Americans.
The great Trump recovery.
America will never be a socialist country. I will fight for you with every breath in my body.
Russia, Russian, pro-Russian, Russian, Russia, Russian, 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 the Russians.
Russia.
And I will never, ever let you down.
A dangerous virus is spreading rapidly in China, and U.S. officials are very worried that it could come here.
This is really the worst attack we've ever had. This is worse than Pearl Harbor. This is worse than the World Trade Center. There's never been an attack like this. The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action. What they're doing is using COVID to steal an election. Together, we will make America strong again. You know what it's about? Fraud, fake ballots. We will make America wealthy again. They are trying to steal the election.
Now, under the leadership of President Trump, we are fully realizing President Kennedy's prescient view of Special Operations Forces.
We will make America proud again. And watch, please, those mail-in ballots. We will make America safe again. And in millions and millions of ballots, their vote is under what they thought they needed. They're dumping more ballots in there, okay? And yes, together, we will make America great again. Thank you. God bless you. If we are right about the fraud, Joe Biden can't be president.
Congress, the chair declares the joint session dissolved.
All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Devolution Power Hour. Noticeably, Burning Bright looks a lot more just better generally because he's not here and he's being replaced by Ghost for tonight. He has some family in town for Easter, so he decided to spend time with them instead of me, and I get it. But Ghost, how are you doing, man?
I'm great. I'm awesome. How are you today?
I'm doing well, and you may notice it's a little lighter outside. It's because we are pre-recording this episode. I have to get up super early tomorrow. I'm heading out of town for the weekend, and this is kind of the best time we could do it, but there's still a lot to talk about. So it is pre-recorded, but should be a good show. Before we get into any of it, we have a couple of sponsors. Actually, one sponsor I want to read, but do you have anything you want to say to the chat? I know you just did your Breaking History episode.
Yeah, it was great. And Matt, I would encourage people to go listen to at least the beginning of it, if not the whole thing, because Matt extrapolated, not knowing y'all had done the Basis Conspiracies episode with Bix, is that how you pronounce her name?
Yep.
He extrapolated from like the occult side, because that's his expertise, and talked about all the occult like elements. We need to get the two of them on a show together just to like compare notes, because he has a lot of supplementary information for her.
Yeah, we can definitely connect those two. Awesome. Well, yeah, reminder, I'm going to scan this thing at the bottom throughout the show just to remind people that this is pre-recorded, but I don't want to cover up our sponsor of today's show, which is Love Litters. Attention all you Badlanders with purring pals and feathered friends, say hello to Love Litters. 100% pure kiln-dried wood, free from chemicals and oh so kind to Mother Nature. No dust, no mess, and no toxins. Just a lightweight solution that's gentle on your wallet and even gentler in your home. Our biodegradable litter is crafted from wood destined for landfills, giving it a new purpose in your pet's life. Cats love it. Our astonishing formula works like magic to neutralize that notorious cat urine odor, keeping your home pine fresh and welcoming. And for bird lovers, it zaps moisture from bird droppings, crumbling them away, all while being safe if pecked at or ingested. And for reptiles and critters too, the mix is crafted to dilute the pine scent, ensuring those little lungs stay happy and healthy. Plus, every 30-pound bag of Love Litters will last up to 6 months, saving you money. Transform your pet care routine today. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/litter. That's badlandsmedia.tv/litter, and breathe easy with a litter that loves your pet as much as you do. Kind of became a word salad there. Love litter turned into liver. So my bad, but those guys are great company, great people too, very supportive of what we're doing here at Badlands Media. So don't forget to support our sponsors. We'll get to another sponsor here a little bit later. One housekeeping thing. We got GART coming up in your neck of the woods, kinda. Like, how far are you from Plymouth?
No, it's closer to BB, but I actually haven't looked what the drive's like. I think it's like a 2-hour flight, so it's not a bad flight. But yeah, okay. It's a lot more north from me.
Yeah, northeast. You guys are all in the same general location. But yeah, coming up soon. If you guys haven't yet, you can get your tickets. We also have single day tickets available, and we may be looking to get creative with some of the social tickets to the social only stuff. So stay tuned. But it's going to be awesome. If you haven't gotten your virtual tickets yet, I'd encourage you to do so. We're doing our second exclusive live stream tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern. That's Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern. With your virtual ticket, you'll get access to all the panels and replays. You get access to a Telegram chat where you can engage with other people that are in person or virtually attending, and us speakers. You get to ask questions to the speakers on stage, and some behind-the-scenes footage, videos, whatnot. But tomorrow on that exclusive live stream, we're kind of spicing up how we do our panels, and I'm pretty excited about it. We're going to do a little over half. We have 12 speakers, so we're going to have 6 panels where it's just pairings, like 2 people on a stage at a time. And we want the audience to help us decide the pairings. So they're going to be doing that on the live stream tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. If you want to give your input, it would be greatly appreciated. But I'm excited to kind of switch things up a little bit. We like doing those. Every conference, we kind of change things a little bit and see how they go, figure out what works, what doesn't. But it should be a good time.
Yeah. And you did read that correctly, that the Canadian Matt Ehret will be at this GART, which is that's a big change. Hopefully DHS doesn't step in and block him at the airport, but we'll see if we can get him in there.
Also, speaking of that, I mean, he's the only Canadian. Typically, we only allow 1 Canadian per event. This event, because Miss Bright's going to be there, we're going to have 2. So I don't know how we're going to handle that. But Cam Cooksey is also going to be speaking. He's just not on this banner yet. We'll get that updated. But anyway,
Wow, so 2 Canadians and a black guy. Wow, that's
and I think JB is going to be there too.
Wow.
So yeah, we're really up in our diversity game, doing our best. Okay, but I want to start with. I would say this is some pretty big story. I mean, obviously, but even devolutionary related and kind of trust the plan type stuff. I don't know if you just caught my show that I just got done going live with the Daily Herald, but I talked about this story. We've had 3 firings now, and one of them just broke as I was ending the show, so I didn't even cover it. But 3 firings from the DoD, and this is a big deal. First up, we have this guy, the Pentagon Deputy Chief of Staff, suspended in the leak investigation. This Darren Selnick. The leaks under scrutiny involve sensitive military plans, including operations related to the Panama Canal, deployment of second aircraft carrier to the Red Sea, a visit by Elon Musk to the Pentagon, and a reported pause in intelligence collection for Ukraine. This is the second guy was Caldwell, this is what he looks like. He's also walked out of the building. And then just now we had this guy, Colin Carroll. 4 months into the job, Colin Carroll is next on the list as the 3rd official suspended from the Pentagon as Chief of Staff to Deputy Defense Secretary Stephen Feinberg. So we're at 3 people now. And I think this goes back to that story of, well, obviously the signal chat stuff, right? I mean, these guys were all connected. Caldwell was actually named as one of the, like his Hegseth's representatives in that signal chat, which is a pretty big deal. And so I wonder, like, did one of these guys bring on that Goldberg from the Atlantic into that chat? Was it one of these guys who were the genesis for that entire story? Like, how did that come about, and why are they getting rid of these guys now? And so I'll let you comment on that, and then I have another point I want to talk about.
That's interesting, and it also, you know, I think back to the some of the people who I listen to just to get, because I like to take in information just from different sources. I think it's healthy to do that. But I'm specifically thinking about Colonel Douglas McGregor. I'm thinking about Colonel Wilkerson. They were pushing a lot of these military. I mean, I don't think at the time they were being reported as leaks, but these military narrative deployments and highlighting it, like emphasizing it heavily. And now, I'm not suggesting those guys are necessarily read in on anything, but it just is interesting that they turned out to be leaks, and that this is now information that was obviously trying to get out there for specific reasons. And when you think about the ceasing or pausing the intelligence gathering on Ukraine, the point that they were making, and I think Scott Ritter as well, was that effectively that renders Ukraine blind. Like, they can't fight a war against Russia without the intelligence gathering by the United States. So obviously the impetus or the motive for doing that would be to communicate to the Western allies that, hey, we've shut down the war with Russia. We need to start this thing back up so we can make sure Ukraine's still fighting.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point. Where I want to kind of take this discussion a little bit is to the aspect of full control, because when I see something like this, like people getting fired, let go because they were leaking information, to me, that's like a complete affront to the narrative that, oh, patriots are in full control. And that's something that, you know, it goes throughout our community, and there's been good debates. We have debates about it on Badlands media all the time too, and what that really means. But there is a subset of people who think everything is fully controlled. We're watching a movie, all these things. And even when the signal chat leak came out, that story, there was like, oh, if this came out because they wanted it to come out. There's, you know, this is a controlled narrative, and they just want to show people what's going on, whatever the points that were being made. But this is an affront to that, because this shows there are still bad people, like opposition people, whatever the enemy is, the deep state establishment, whatever it is, the globalists, you can call it whatever, but they're still embedded within not just the DoD and the Pentagon. They're probably all over. They are all over. And them having to fire people for leaking stuff shows that the leaks were not like part of the plan. They were intentional from the enemy. The enemy was trying to sabotage. I mean, they called for Hegseth's resignation for a while over this, and not just him. I think Mike Waltz too. And I'm not defending either one of those two, but they're trying to interfere in the regular course of business from this administration, in national security matters from the DoD. And this was bad actors, and that's why they're being removed. And this kind of proves to me that the full control aspect is not what some people think it is. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I completely agree. And this goes back to, I think my perspective on all of that is the idea of like narrative warfare. Like, what is the point of the narrative? What is the point of telling the story? And I think a lot of people take for granted the concept of it being to wake up the normies, right? And for the benefit of the public. And that's obviously an aspect of it, to educate the public and walk them along and incrementally inform them toward like an awakening. But I also think that the narrative is about engaging in like a chess match against bad actors and seeding narratives, seeding ideas in order to, from a game theory standpoint, to get bad actors to make bad moves and expose themselves, and then you take them out. And I think I view this as exactly that. I mean, this is knocking pawns off of the chessboard, right?
Yeah. I mean, I remember some of the reporting from then. That story, what was that, like a month ago? It's hard to even remember. It's been such a blur these last few weeks. But the big talking point from that, from the left, was like, this was the first big blunder from the Trump administration. This was such a huge story and huge, risk of national security that this information included a journalist on those chat groups. And I wonder if we're going to see that one of these guys intentionally brought him in. And I also wonder, does this rise to a level of treason? Like, is this something that these people going against the administration, they're the ones who compromise national security if they did something like this, or if they're leaking classified info and battle plans and stuff? To me, that's treason. Is it not?
I would 100% agree. I'm not a lawyer, not a JAG officer, but I would think so. I would also think that you look at all of the arguments that were made against Pete Hegseth and Mike Waltz about how much of a blunder this was. You have to now apply all of that to these people who were walked out, the people who were involved in that subversion. And then that becomes leverage to pinch them and say, okay, tell us everything. Tell us who you're working for, who your what your motives are, like what is your MO. And I mean, that those guys look relatively young. I mean, do they want to spend the rest of their life at Fort Leavenworth? What is it, Levin? Isn't that or Leavenworth? Isn't that the military prison? Well, I mean, do you want to spend the rest of your life in military prison or be executed for treason? All right, well, tell us everything.
Yeah. This could get interesting, guys. I don't remember a story like this where people, like multiple officials within a short time period, were walked off the job because of stuff like this. And the fact that the first one was, I think, in the early morning, it got reported on yesterday, and then a full almost 24 hours go by and we get the third one. So did they walk somebody else off the job, take him into custody, and start asking him questions? And then he rolled over and gave up some more names, and now we have another one. You know what I mean? So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more names come out of people getting walked off the job. But the fact that it's even happening, like if you were part of that, group or small group or whatever, maybe they weren't connected, maybe they were, but there's this investigation into it. You see people starting to get in trouble. You start panicking. You're going to start. Yeah. You might even come forward. Who knows? This is just a very interesting time. And I think this could be there's more to the story. I wonder if there's even people on top of them coordinating, coordinating this stuff and what their ties are to, and the reason behind it too. Like, why would you do this unless you're part of some element trying to interfere in Trump's administration? Like they saw that resistance a lot in the first term,
For sure. And from a game theory standpoint, to your point, this deployment, the narrative deployment, is going to cause panic at other levels. So then you just sit there and you monitor the battle space and see, where is the chatter now exploding? Like, where are we seeing a lot of chatter, and where are we seeing people kind of scrambling to communicate with one another? And that then maybe you can hone in on those people and start to see what they're up to. And I mean, again, this is like the full control element. It's like, how much of this has been predetermined and how much of this is like an evolving story. I think that's somewhat irrelevant because it's the story that we're being told and the story that we're going to understand. We probably will never understand the full truth as it actually has occurred, but the story that's being told is how it's going to be remembered in history. And so I think the evolution is really what becomes the history.
Yeah, but I mean, if they carry this all the way through and prosecute these people, that stuff will likely become public. Like, they'll have to publicize the evidence they have in order to punish these people and get the accountability. So
for sure. Yeah, I'm referring more to like how many of these people did they already know were bad actors?
Oh, sure.
And this was all predetermined. Like we're never going to get that data. But
yeah,
the way this is being rolled out, like let's just say they already know who all the bad actors are, but they're incrementally rolling it out and like rolling them up because they want to see who then panics and what heads pop up. And then who do they like? Where do they go next?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's going to be interesting, guys. These next couple of weeks, just this story alone is going to be pretty interesting. You had sent over this thread or the story on what Rubio's doing, and I guess he sat down with Mike Benz. I missed this, but it's pretty interesting, and this kind of has to do with the deep state stuff and a lot of election fraud ties to this story too because of what they're shutting down here. Rubio shutting down State Department Disinfo office. And there's a full thread from Mike Benz, and I think I'm going to read through this instead, kind of go right to the horse's mouth here. Breaking, the U.S. State Department has just placed all 30 full-time staff at the Global Engagement Center's remnant, known as the RFIMI, on leave, eliminated all 50 full-time staff positions, and delivered a notice to Congress ending RFIMI's existence and $65 million in funding. The historic development today was made possible by Rubio and acting Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy, Beattie. I forgot he's in the administration now, Darren Beattie. That's pretty cool. As part of a complete restructuring of the State Department's activities and capacities to prevent the abuses and weaponization of the past, the development today is the State Department's initiation of a reduction in force that will permanently end the positions at GEC. So there's no more reshuffling of positions or simple renamings of the office to carry out the same aligned censorship efforts. And that was the concern when this first went down and they were looking at this, is they basically just reorganized it because I think it was the first spending bill that was debated back in like December that they went through. They tried to reauthorize the GEC with funding, but that didn't work. And so they basically just put it in a different agency or something like that.
It says right there, the Counter Foreign Information Manipulation and Interference Office.
There we go. Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Here we go. The GEC was formally sunset late last year after a showdown in Congress to deny its reauthorization. The Biden State Department got around it by putting the GEC staff operations under a new name, the Counter Foreign Information Manipulation and Interference Office. Nailed it. Last month, Rubio and Acting Secretary for Public Diplomacy, Beattie, terminated 100+ contractors. And then in government, it's easier to terminate a contract than a public employee. The structuring of today's move as stage one of a reduction in force to eliminate the office and dissolve the office entirely prevents the possibility of bureaucratic delays that come from contesting firings. So this is a big story because that agency, the GEC, Global Engagement Center, what they did to censor and essentially help cover up the election theft, it was I don't even know if you can put a number on how impactful that was, like what they did to the harm they did. And so to see movements like this is the stuff I've been waiting for. Is we see all these like superficial comments and orders and moves that are like, okay, this is cool, but the problem's still there. This is a move that is actually appearing to be going after the problem directly, and that's the type of stuff I continue to want to see from the administration. So I'm amazed by this. Love it.
Yeah, and don't feel bad about missing this because I think Mike Benz and Rubio sat down while you were doing the Daily Herald. This was like they just went live like an hour or 2 hours ago. But yeah, this aligns with all the stories that I'm tracking geopolitically, ties into this because as Mike Benz has detailed over the past however many months or years he's been doing this, the Global Engagement Center was about disseminating funds across really what you would call NATO, like the NATO alliance, in order to prevent what they were calling Kremlin-aligned governments from passing legislation that shut down effectively NGOs. And that's what we're seeing play out. That's what Matt Ehret and I were just talking about on Breaking History. And this conflict between the East and the West and Russia and NATO ultimately is about misinformation, disinformation censorship, and the ability for third-party actors, NGOs, to operate inside of European countries, being externally funded and influence their politics. And that's why Robert Fico, by the way, was shot in the chest 5 times last year because he passed legislation saying if you're an NGO and more than 20% of your funding comes from outside of Slovakia, you have to publicly disclose where that money's coming from. And
wow.
That's the reason they shot him. And that's the reason they threatened the Georgian prime ministers, because he was trying to pass the same thing. Putin, by the way, got that legislation passed in Russia 15 to 20 years ago.
Yeah, that was like the Soros thing.
Yep, the Soros thing.
I forgot about that guy getting shot. But yeah, this is a huge deal. Do you want to talk more about how this ties into what you've been tracking? Because we could probably go into that and then come back later for the IP address story.
Sure. Yeah. So right now, I know like you and I have talked about it, and I think we probably talked about it on this show. But you know how on May 9th they're going to have the this big World War II commemorative parade in Russia, and at first the rhetoric or the narrative was that Trump and Putin were going to meet in Riyadh in April, and then Trump was going to maybe attend the parade in Moscow. Well, now they've pushed the Riyadh meeting back to May, so Trump has still been invited to go, but whether or not he will, right as of right now, he's not going. But all of these other Eastern European and Central European countries are going. One of them is Serbia. And so the EU is now pressuring all these guys to not go. They're saying, so this is the Serbian president who is, pro-Trump and aligned with Trump. And then you have Robert Fico is.
So real quick. So Serbia is trying to join BRICS or what?
No. So the Serbian president is invited to go to Moscow to attend
just for that parade.
Yeah, just for the parade. And so the EU, they're not part of the EU, but they like applied to join the EU a while back. But this guy Vucic does not want to join the EU, and so they're saying if you go, then you can't join the EU. Like we're basically gonna put like your membership application on permanent, like indefinite hold. And he was like, I don't care. Like fine, like screw the EU.
Wow.
Yeah, and then you have Robert Fico. He is attending. He's like, I'm 100% going, and they're threatening him. Yes, that's Slovakia. So the other guy was Serbia. And so Serbia, we did an episode on that a couple of weeks ago on Breaking History. That was a major part of what used to be called Yugoslavia. And now Slovakia, different country, next to Ukraine and Hungary, is this guy Fico. And so Fico, this is the guy who got shot in the chest 5 times.
Oh yeah.
And so he's like, yeah, I'm 100% going to attend. And the EU is threatening him if he goes. So now you have the EU straight up threatening sovereign leaders of nations for saying, we're just going to go attend a parade in Moscow.
What are they threatening them with, though?
Well, it says right here that says warning and threat by Ms. Collis are disrespectful, and I strongly reject them. I will go to Moscow on May 9th. Is Ms. Collis warning a form of blackmail or a signal that I will be punished upon my return from Moscow? I don't know, but I do know that the year is 2025, not 1939. So I don't think there's any I don't think there's like a direct threat of like a specific punishment. I think it's just there's just rhetoric being extended to them. Remember the Georgian prime minister, the guy with the crazy hair. He was trying to pass the NGO legislation right after this guy got shot, and one of the EU bureaucrats called him up and said, "Hey, man, you saw what happened to Fico, right? Like, you got to be careful. You might be next." And so he went public with that and said, "I just got a phone call where somebody threatened me. They're saying that I might be next if I pass the legislation." So this kind of rhetoric, I think, gets tossed around, and ultimately what the EU represents is it does represent like a totalitarian bureaucracy over the entire European continent.
Yeah, and this is just so interesting in terms of like the pattern we've seen from all the geopolitical situations. I mean, with the formation of BRICS and Trump's past comments with all these other foreign leaders from those countries, and then also Trump's stance against the EU lately, where basically we're getting this narrative from the mainstream, and the mainstream media is recognizing, which is probably the most interesting part, is Trump is treating the EU like the enemy. Like they're not treating them like allies anymore. And now they're taking this stance, and they're upset with people even going to this parade. Like they're not going over there to announce some sort of major trade deal or anything crazy. Maybe that comes later, I don't know. But they're just going to this parade and they're freaking out. They're losing their grip on the narrative of the EU being the world leaders and part of the, I guess the world order, the global order.
The good guys. The good guys. It's
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what's, I think they're panicking over that. And you're right, this does tie into the Global Engagement Center stuff, because that's part of that narrative too. Like always painting Russia as the bad guy and China as the bad, and maybe they are, I don't know. But this is like working against that narrative too. Like this is beautiful to see, in my opinion, because along with what Trump is doing economically to reshape the global order with the tariffs and the trade and all this stuff, we're getting actuals from other foreign leaders that don't really care about the EU. And these people are working with Trump. This is part of the larger plan in play, in my opinion.
100%. And so remember, there's the EU, which was formed in 1993, and then there's NATO, which was formed in, I think it was 1949, 1948. And so NATO is a military defensive alliance. Yep. So it's military. The EU is a bureaucracy that oversees like all the governments within its bloc. I think it's 33 members, something like that, 30 some members. And so the EU, now that Trump has signaled that the United States is no longer going to back the Ukrainian military, the EU is now saying, well, we should form our own military, like a continental army, and we should raise like an army at the continental level that supersedes all the individual sovereign nations, which would be separate from NATO. That would be a different thing from NATO. But it's important, like to your point about the Global Engagement Center, it's worth noting the first operation that NATO did on a foreign continent, I believe it was the first one on a foreign continent. The first one in Africa, at least, was 2011, and that was the Arab Spring. And the impetus for doing that was a Al Jazeera story where Gaddafi was accused in Libya, was accused of giving Viagra to all of his soldiers and ordering them to rape women in villages where ISIS was accused of, or where like terrorist groups were accused of operating. And so that became the whole reason that NATO went into Africa, and they said, we got to go in there and protect these people from Gaddafi and his raping soldiers. That was the whole reason they overthrew Gaddafi and killed him. And then they raided his armory. They took the weapons out of his armory. They sent him to Syria, and that's what created ISIS. We then later learned that entire story from Al Jazeera was completely fabricated and had no basis in fact. So the whole reason that NATO got its foot into Africa was based on misinformation, lies from the media that they then used as the reason to go invade like a continent. So
wasn't he the guy like short? Yeah, I think it was this. This is Gaddafi, right? His comments about 9/11.
Yes.
Yeah, and this has kind of come back into the limelight too recently with the Tucker Carlson interview. That guy, former senator. But let me play this quick.
How about Al Qaeda?
القاعدة وين هي؟
Where is القاعدة؟
القاعدة هنا في نيويورك.
القاعدة يصير in New York.
من هو بن لادن؟
Who is he, Bin Laden? He committed a heinous act.
هو بن لادن عملها.
Bin Laden made this heinous act. You don't think what Osama bin Laden did was wrong?
هو كان في إحدى الطائرات اللي ضربت في الإبراج.
Was he on board one of those aircraft that hit the tower? But he took credit for sending them.
لا هذا شيء ثاني لكن.
This is another thing.
يعني ما أعتقدش الآن بين يدينا حكم قانوني ضد بن لادن بهالخصوص.
I don't think that in front of us we have a court sentence vis-a-vis bin Laden or in this regard.
I don't need to play the whole thing, but you get the idea. That's Gaddafi. And shortly thereafter that he was killed, but he basically said that, it was the United States government who.
Yep. Worth noting that Gaddafi was one of the original guys on BRICS. He's the one who was like, hey, we should do this BRICS thing. He was trying to create a currency for Africa. He rejected central banks. He wouldn't let central banks come into Libya. And then in 2009, he very famously went to the UN and gave a speech where he said they are in the midst of creating viruses and creating diseases where they will start pandemics and then they will sell you the vaccine. He said that. And then less than 2 years later, he was being dragged out of his castle and murdered on the internet. And Hillary Clinton was laughing about it on television.
I did not realize that.
Oh, dude, I can
like that.
Yeah,
actually, I think I found it.
Yeah, go pull that up. But
is it this one?
Yep, that's the one.
I believe there'll be many. I'm going to read it.
Yep.
Many viruses in the future. Companies are working hard to create them, especially private intelligence agencies. Is that the UN? It's obvious that it's a business because the vaccinations are so expensive. They create a virus that they spread around the world so that capitalistic companies can make massive profits. How is this possible? If the virus is threatening the existence of mankind, shouldn't the vaccine be free and available to everyone? Read the Green Book. I've talked about it there. I was not aware of this video. We shouldn't have to pay for vaccinations. They should be free. Yeah, I mean, again, that's...
Yeah. And it's pretty wild. And it's also worth noting on like last note there is that Gaddafi, if you look at where Libya is, it's like the center of the northern coast of Africa in the Mediterranean.
Do you want to pull it up on a map, maybe?
Yeah. Just go to Google Maps. Here, share.
I got you up.
Yeah, share my screen. Okay, so you can see Libya's right here. And so Gaddafi was like known as the guy who was fighting all the terrorist groups. He was fighting Al-Qaeda. He was fighting all of the radical Islamic terror groups in Africa. He was the one holding back all of these African migrants from traveling north and going into Europe. And so after they took him out in 2011, after the Arab Spring, that was when all the boats started leaving Libya and going into Greece and Italy. And then eventually they started going to France. So the whole like migrant wave that went into Europe, he was the one holding all those groups back and not letting them, because they would go north in Africa and then they run into him and his army would stop them. So, it's crazy how all of this stuff is connected. And now you have Putin operating in Africa and helping like sovereign minded people like reclaim their government and fight off these, ISIS and all that. The money that we've been sending to Ukraine, Russia, Mali, like all these countries are openly accusing the United States and Ukraine of funneling that money to this region right here and funding ISIS. So
no
it's
way.
like, yeah. So like ISIS in Africa is being funded by the money that we're sending to Ukraine. That's the allegation, at least. All this stuff is completely connected. So it's like this whole thing we talk about with the Sovereign Alliance and devolution. I mean, I view it as all one and the same. It's all the same story, and it's not just a theory. It's something that is actually kinetically happening, specifically in Africa, but also the Middle East.
Yeah, that is fascinating. We should almost get to the Middle East now, because I know you had something you want to talk about there, and then we can get to a couple other stories to wrap it up.
Yeah. So real quick, because this will lead into the Middle East, but this story, Trump aides clash on trusting Moscow. So I mentioned last night on Only Lands that there for many days, maybe even a few weeks now, there have been this evolving rift that's being reported within the Trump administration. And on one side, you have Marco Rubio, Mike Waltz, Mike Huckabee, like the establishment Republican guys. And then on the other side, you have the businessmen who have entered the Trump administration: Steve Wickoff, Adam Boehler, Mossad Bolis, who is Tiffany Trump's father-in-law, Tom Barack. These guys are transactional. So they're going in there and they're like, hey, guys, why are we not sitting down in a room with Hamas and speaking to them directly? Why are we not sitting down in a room with Vladimir Putin and speaking to them directly? Why are we using third-party back channels to talk to these guys? Let's just go meet with them directly. So Steve Wickoff has flown to Moscow multiple times now and met face-to-face with Putin. And that has pissed off a lot of people, particularly Marco Rubio and Mike Waltz, because they think it's totally inappropriate and that we shouldn't be validating Vladimir Putin as like the leader of Russia or something. That doesn't really make any sense. But and then of course Mike Huckabee is super upset that Adam Boehler went and met face to face with Hamas in Qatar and said that we shouldn't be meeting face to face with Hamas. So it's like these businessmen are being very pragmatic in how they're approaching the peace process. And the establishment Republicans are very angry about that and basically want to preserve the status quo of like this unipolar world order where we have forever war.
Yeah, and this is part of the problem too with like what I'm seeing from the Trump administration and why I think we're on the right track here at Badlands by advocating for, I wouldn't say dissent is the right word, but at least discussion over some of the issues that we're seeing, because it makes total sense to want to be face to face with a leader that we're told we're in a conflict with, right? Or we're trying to get peace. But yet we see people within Trump's administration stonewalling that, and everybody's just like, "Oh, trust the plan, bro." Like it's, if you don't trust Trump, you don't trust Trump. You don't think he knows what he's doing? No, I absolutely believe he knows what he's doing. That's why he brought somebody like Steve Witkoff on. But maybe he gave Rubio a position because he followed advice or somebody owed somebody a deal or what. Who knows what the reason behind any of these cabinet positions are? But it's ridiculous that these people are upset over somebody going and talking directly to these nations when we're trying to get a sovereign alliance built, right?
Yeah, for sure. And to your point, I mean, maybe the point of putting all these television characters, these famous neocons on the administration was because he wanted these debates to happen. He wants the discussion. I mean, could you imagine if Trump just came in and brought all outsiders in to be in his cabinet? What would the establishment people do? They would hibernate. They'd go into hibernation, act like they didn't exist for 5 years. And then once Trump's gone, they come right back out of hibernation and retake control of everything.
Yeah.
This forces them. Think of it like this, because this kind of ties into devolution. If devolution happened, and devolution is a thing, and the whole point of the Biden administration was basically to put the Democrat platform on stage, hand it the microphone, and walk away and let the Democrats explain to the world exactly who they are, which is what the Biden administration did. That whole program is now defunct. I mean, the Democrats are never going to win another national election for forever, right? What if now we're seeing the exact same thing being done to the like the traditional establishment Republican Party, where the Republicans are now handed the microphone and Trump's like, all right, the stage is yours. Tell everybody who you are. Well, we're the party of forever war. And we want to basically have a unipolar world order where every country in the world bends the knee and submits to the State Department and we control them. And it's like, no, we don't want that either.
That's such a good point. That's such a good point. And I don't think I've seen somebody talk about it that way or bring that up even, because at some point that needs to happen. And the exposure of the Republican Party, I think to a certain extent has happened. A lot of people, Trump has a huge mandate. It's not even, I wouldn't even consider it the Republican Party anymore. It's the Make America Great Again Party. It's the America First Party. We're just under the label of Republican Party. But you're absolutely right. Like what if what Chris Paul is saying about JD Vance is true, and he might not be who we think he is. And yet he's being propped up as the future of the party. Maybe he is. Maybe that is who Trump wants. Maybe he's great. I don't know. But if he's not, if they go into hibernation and he gets in there, and all of a sudden it's right back to business as usual, then we're kind of effed. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and the only way to kind of rid ourselves of the cancer is to expose it fully. And maybe you're absolutely right that this is exactly what they're doing here, because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, maybe the bicameral way to look at it with JD Vance is maybe JD Vance has the opportunity to be the guy, but if this nefarious neocon element is right there, they're going to basically drag him in the direction of being, a bad actor ultimately. But if we can remove that cancer, maybe JD Vance can be the guy that people want him to be, right? So you can have your cake and eat it too. It's like maybe JD Vance is good, maybe he's bad, but I don't really think that's the way to look at it at this point. I think right now we want the debate, we want the argument, and here is like that'll take us straight to the Middle East, and then we can go to the IP story.
Well, but before we do that, I just want to show something to everybody here. I just got to find it. Yesterday, Ron Paul, and I only watched about half of it, so I didn't even quite get fully into this, but I'm just scrolling Marissa Hans's timeline because I know she's the one who posted it. But he had a podcast episode, and on this episode they talked about the number of neocons still within the Trump administration. Like they're everywhere. And I just want to find it, point people out where to go. Man, where the heck is it? Is this it? Yeah, right here. Ron Paul. While the second Trump administration was billed as a clean break from the neocons who have dominated Republican and Democrat politics for decades, including Trump 1.0, unfortunately, we are steadily seeing neocons and especially neocon policies creeping back into place like a bad virus. And then they have a 25-minute podcast here where they discuss this. I think it's worth watching. Everybody should watch this and get an understanding, because it kind of proves the point that you just made. So I take the time to watch this. Neocons are everywhere. It hasn't gone away. If anything, it's trying to hibernate and maintain a little grip on things. And unless we get rid of it now, they're going to come back.
Yep. And it's worth noting the neoconservative movement was created by Bill Kristol's father and other people in the early 1970s because they were Democrats who had become disenchanted with the hippie movement and they didn't like the direction of the Democratic Party. So they reinvented themselves as Republicans and created the neoconservative movement. So they literally were Democrats who then said, you know what? We don't like the Democrat Party anymore and this hippy dippy bullshit. So we're going to become Republicans now and just call ourselves something different. And that's the origin of the modern uniparty. So there really was like a switch, like a party switch, but it happened in the 1970s. It didn't happen in the Civil War.
Yeah, that's a great point, man. Okay.
So like, let's talk about the Iran nuclear deal. This is a fascinating discussion. And we won't go super deep into it, but people probably heard that last weekend we had official Steve Witkoff went to Oman. Oman is the country like southeast here. I'll show you where Oman is. Oman is right here. This is actually kind of like a tropical, lush part of the Middle East and a pretty prosperous place, relatively speaking, for this region. Trump has golf courses that he's licensed his name to there. He's done business deals there, so he has contacts in this place. So Witkoff went and met with Iranian officials in Muscat, which is the capital. And the reports are that they had a great conversation and it was a really, really positive result. And they're actually going to meet this Saturday all over again.
In Rome, though.
Well, they were saying in Rome. Now Iran's saying they're going to go back to Muscat. So it might be in Rome. And, you know, of course, Giorgia Meloni is our girl. So it could be in Rome, but it could also be back in Muscat. Either way, I think it's a net positive. But Witkoff came out of that meeting and was saying, look, we want Iran to have a nuclear program. We want Iran to we just don't want them to have be developing nuclear weapons. He now has the story now. It says Trump envoy demands Iran eliminate nuclear program, an apparent U-turn. This is the new story out from yesterday. It actually
real quick question. So I think I saw reports that we were asking Iran to give up all their enriched uranium to Russia. Is there any merit to that?
Well, yeah. So there's a debate happening now, and I think this is probably going to be like the art of the deal. But the idea is that all of the uranium they've already enriched, that Russia would basically take control of it, and Russia would basically store it for them, because Russia, of course, is already considered a nuclear power. And so I went and did some research, did some ChatGPT stuff to understand it, and basically it's this: according to international norms and definition, uranium has to be enriched to over 90% to be considered quote unquote weapons grade. However, if you enrich it over 20% and have enough of it, you can create kind of like a dirty bomb. Like you can create a bomb. It just isn't going to be like the military weapons grade. And so what they have in Iran, according to the narrative, who knows if any of this is real, but they've done anywhere from 20% to 60%. You only need to enrich it to over 3% in order for it to be run as part of a civilian nuclear power plant, like a nuclear program. So I think that that Guardian narrative, like the MSM narrative, is wrong, because Witkoff is not saying eliminate your entire nuclear program. He's saying get rid of your enriched uranium above a certain capacity. Keep the stuff that's under 6%, keep enriching over 3%, and then you can have a civilian nuclear. We built their first reactor in 1975, so they have a nuclear reactor. We built it for them. Yeah, and it's like the Soviets helped them maintain it once the Ayatollah came into power. But here, share my screen again. This is where it gets really interesting. This came out on Monday or Sunday night. Saudi Arabia, U.S. on pathway to civil nuclear agreement. And I've been talking about this, speculating for weeks now, that I think the Iran nuclear deal is really going to be a offer for all of these second world countries to get access to civil nuclear power plants and nuclear programs. Because MBS has said for years, I want a nuclear power plant in Saudi Arabia. And here, just to give you, I'll scroll down and give you the source document. It's Section 123 of the U.S. Atomic Energy Act of 1954, and that's what Riyadh wants. And what that means is, if you have this agreement, that means that U.S. contractors can go to Saudi Arabia, build them a nuclear reactor, and run it for them, and help them maintain it and run it. and that's what they would need to have nuclear power. And of course, if they want to run these like massive data centers and have, you know, the energy demands that they want for this new Saudi Arabia they want to build, they're going to need a nuclear power plant, or at least one, if not many. So
it's kind of wild that they don't have a nuclear reactor already.
Yeah, well, I mean, think about it. It's like they're oil guys. So
Yeah.
I think the rhetoric has always been, the narrative has always been, well, they're oil people. Oil is in their blood, so they want to stick to gas and oil as like the world's lifeblood. They don't want atomic energy. But where things get like the wrinkle here is the last article I'll share is then this guy comes out. Israel's Lapid rejects U.S.-Saudi nuclear deal, allowing Riyadh to enrich uranium. And so this guy he was the prime minister of Israel from 2021 to 2022 for like 10 months. He's like considered the Netanyahu opponent. He's like the opposition leader against Netanyahu. He's the one who's like, let's go to a two-state solution. Let's not have war with Hamas. Even he is saying no Muslim country in the Middle East should have a nuclear program, period, because we don't trust the Muslims, and we think no matter what, they're going to enrich uranium to develop nuclear weapons. Well, I will remind everyone that the Houthis, when they started attacking ships and preventing ships to go to Israel and deliver supplies, namely food, it was the Saudis who organized a convoy system. They had ships, instead of going up through the Red Sea past Yemen, they had ships go this way to the Persian Gulf, dock in the UAE, and then the Saudis paid for these convoys to drive across Saudi Arabia and go to Israel to deliver food and all the supplies that they would need to make sure that the Israeli people didn't starve.
Who was doing that?
That the Saudis were doing that.
No, but who's delivering the food?
The Saudis. So like MBS and the Emiratis. Like, so the Saudis and the Emiratis, like in order to subvert the Houthis were attacking ships that were coming up through the Red Sea. And so the ships couldn't pass. So they said, all right, come over here to Abu Dhabi, dock here, and then we'll load everything on trucks, drive it across Saudi Arabia and deliver it to Israel. So to address that guy's point, he's like, we can't trust these Muslims. I think if Saudi Arabia wanted the Israeli people to suffer and die, their opportunity to do that has passed. Like they wouldn't have organized the convoys to make sure the people had food in Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
But now they're saying that, hey, we can't trust these guys with a nuclear power plant. I think this goes back to JFK. JFK was told by Eisenhower the day before he entered office, the biggest problem you're going to deal with is this secret nuclear program that Israel has, because Israel has, to this day, has never signed any nuclear agreement with the United States. Every other country has. And the reason they didn't sign it is because it would allow inspectors to come in and look at their facilities. And so JFK was trying to send people to go look at the facilities. He was being blocked by their prime minister, Ben Gurion. And ultimately, it might have been the reason that he was assassinated. So, I mean, that's at least the allegation. I wonder if we're going to see all of that adjudicated, because if they're going to force these inspections onto Iran and Saudi Arabia, you got to think that Saudi Arabia and Iran are going to say, okay, your turn. Like, let's go inspect Israel and see what y'all have going on.
Yeah. You know, something this makes me think of is during the devolution term with Biden in office, you know, Trump back in the day in his first term, he got out of the Iran nuclear deal. Biden was in there. He basically campaigned on getting back into that deal. And every time he'd go meet with them, he would, it never came to fruition. And simultaneously, we had our own military like bombing Iranian backed facilities. It's like, okay, Biden's at the negotiating table, or his people, whatever, and we're bombing the people we're negotiating with while it's happening. It's just, it's mind blowing to me. It's one of those contradictions I always point to, because it's a pretty clear and obvious one. But why do you think we never got back into any sort of deal with Iran, and where does that put us now? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's a great question. So from a devolution standpoint, I would say that the reason we didn't re-enter the deal is because I actually don't even think that the Iran nuclear deal was about nukes anyway. I think it was it was a money laundering operation where we're basically like convoy, airplanes full of cash were being flown to Iran under the cover of darkness by Obama. And then that money was being put into central banks and laundered. And actually, there were a number of bankers in Iran during the Trump administration who were arrested and put in prison. And I think, I mean, I don't have the sauce on it, but I think that they were connected to this. The other thing that's interesting is this. Share my screen one last time. This is from today's news. Iranian government official who was key to the 2015 nuclear deal tenders resignation under pressure. So the guy who literally, from the Iranian side, who made the deal with Obama and Biden to make the nuclear deal, was just resigned because he was being pressured by the new president to resign. So he's out.
Interesting.
Yeah. So these wrinkles are there, and it's I don't know how to like piece it all together, but you think about the Raisi like assassination or his death, the helicopter going down. You think about like what's happening now with this new president.
Who's the new president?
It's this guy,
Masoud.
Masoud Pezeshkian. I don't know. I can't say it, but yeah, he's supposed to be more of like a reformer. He's supposed to be like a moderate. But
interesting.
Anyway, so I mean, there's still plenty to watch play out, but all the signal to me is that we're watching the Sovereign Alliance piece together something. And I think what we're probably going to see, and we can end it here and pivot to the next story, is I think we're going to see a moment where the neocons are there's a hard line drawn, and on one side you're going to have Steve Witkoff and Vladimir Putin, and the other side you're going to have the neocons. And I think Trump's going to side with Steve Witkoff and Vladimir Putin against the neocons and against like the establishment Republicans, and that's going to be like a major moment, I think, in this whole political story.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because not only are the neocons and the establishment on the same side, but they're siding with Europe, who we were just talking about, right? And that's like who Trump has basically created as an enemy now. Like that's who Trump is treating like an enemy. And so what does that mean for the neocons and the establishment people? Like that means they're siding with our enemy now, and the people not siding with the enemy are the good guys. That's who Trump is working with. So yeah, absolutely, I believe Trump will work with.
And by the way, that the opportunity to have that moment where Trump sides with Putin over the neocons doesn't exist. It doesn't happen unless Trump appoints neocons to his cabinet.
Yep. And also this explains some of Trump's posts on social media where he like comes out and gives like a neocon talking point against Putin or just in general. Like, why would he do something like that? That's not what we know to be going on or believe to be going on. Well, it's because you have to feed the neocon narrative too until you get to that point where that inflection point where you make the decision and side publicly with Putin and Witkoff or whatever. Like that explains why he makes those comments.
It's like laying bait for like a wild animal and then leading the wild animal into the trap, right?
Yeah. And that explains some of his comments towards Israel too. And some of the anti-Semitism stuff that he's doing within his administration. Like explains that as well. Like you side with the neocons and give the neocon talking points until you reach that inflection point, which we're clearly not there yet.
Yep. I completely think that is the direction we're heading in. We got to watch it play out, but I'm very encouraged by where everything is falling. So we'll see.
Awesome. Okay. Well, let's go to the next thing I want to discuss here. There's really two more stories I want to get into. One of them is more just like interesting, and this was posted on the White House website. I know what, actually, before we do any of that, let's get a word from Mike Lindell real quick.
You're still looking good.
I'm still feeling good. You know, I've got all your MyPillow products. Mattress topper, bed sheets, MyPillows, towels, slippers, blankets.
I'm interrupting this commercial to do something I've never done before. Get 2 MyPillows absolutely free on orders of $100 or more. I can't do this forever, so get on board with this great sale today. Our best-selling 6-piece bath towel sets or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Our famous standard MyPillows only $14.98. Queens $18.98. King size only $1 more. Body pillows $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bed sheet sets. Any size, any color. So go to MyPillow.com or call that number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And when you spend $100 or more, get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
Awesome. Mike Lindell. I mean, everybody, you need a new pillow at least once a year, right? Probably. I guess maybe even less than that. I don't know. I don't know what the standard pillow purchasing procedure is, but if you haven't, you should get an update your MyPillow, get it from Mike Lindell and use our promo code. Support our sponsors. We greatly appreciate it. But all right, this was posted. This was 2 days ago, actually. And I just want to read one line on here. Remarks by Director Kratsios at the Endless Frontiers Retreat. And it is down here. I'm just going to search for it again. Right here. So this is what I've seen this all over social media, and I'm actually going to play the clip here in a second. Our technologies permit us to manipulate time and space. They leave distance annihilated, cause things to grow, and improve productivity. There's like, oh my gosh, are they saying we have the technology to like time travel? I don't think that's exactly what he's saying, but this is the clip of him actually saying it. And the reason I brought this up was only because of who this guy is, this Krastios. He's like he's got an interesting background. I think it's a little devolution-y, and I'd never heard of this guy before until he made this comment and people started freaking out about it on social media. But let's listen to this clip quick.
Our passenger planes are slower than they used to be. Our trains crawl compared to those in other parts of the world. Our cars do not fly. Advances have not stopped, but something has gone wrong. Stagnation was a choice. We have weighed down our builders and innovators. The well-intentioned regulatory regime of the 1970s became an ever-tightening ratchet, first hampering America's ability to become a net energy exporter and then making it harder and harder to build. We seem to have lost focus and vision, to have lowered our sights and let systems and structures and bureaucracies muddle us along. But we are capable of so much more. Our technologies permit us to manipulate time and space. They leave distance annihilated, cause things to grow and improve productivity. Our passenger planes.
So, I mean, it is kind of an interesting comment, but he also does close out that speech. Where did I put it? Here we go. Let me go back down to the end. He says the same thing again, similar anyway. It is the choices of individuals that will make the new American golden age possible, the choice of individuals to master the sclerosis of the state, and the choice of individuals to craft new technologies and give themselves to scientific discoveries that will bend time and space, make more with less, and travel us further into the endless frontier. I think he's more so talking about like our technologies will allow us to go from point A to point B a lot faster than just walking and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I started digging into this guy. Like, okay, who is this guy that's saying it? And why is it on the Trump's website? This guy, he was previously in Trump's administration in his first term. He is currently the director of the Office of Science and Technology Policy, which that was a key position during the devolution term. Like with Trump's Executive Order 13961, he took away from the bureaucracy. You know, anytime there's communication that needs to be done through some sort of continuity government, needs to go through all this red tape and multiple individuals will be involved, whatever. It got switched to that role, the Office of Science, the director of the Office of Science and Technology and Policy. And so that's like the first thing that jumped out to me. But then I gotta find one more thing here. Hold for processing. Okay, so this right here was the first thing that jumped out. He was a visiting scholar at Tsinghua University. That is like deep state through and through in China. You go back and it's what's the guy's name? Rubinstein, remember him? He was a visiting scholar at Tsinghua University, and so was Dr. Holdren, who was the guy that was the director of the OSTP when they lifted the moratorium on gain of function research for COVID. So I thought that was an interesting connection, number one. And then going on, just looking at my notes here to find the other ones. Okay, yeah, this guy was where's his career? White House.
What was he doing in 2020? Like
Right
during
here.
COVID?
We'll get there. I'll check this out. Prior to joining the Trump administration as deputy assistant to the president, Kratsios was a principal at Thiel Capital and served as chief of staff to entrepreneur and venture capitalist Peter Thiel. Okay, that's like seems pretty significant.
That is very significant.
And then here, he led this is Trump's first administration. He was deputy assistant, to the president for technology policy. Okay. He led the administration's efforts on artificial intelligence and quantum information science. He is the architect of the American AI Initiative, the national strategy for promoting American leadership in AI. In January 2020, he announced the establishment of the National AI Initiative Office at the White House. And he also, during COVID, he's the guy who launched the COVID-19 High Performance Computing Consortium, which was the largest public-private computing partnership ever created. And then going even further, later on in 2020, he was put at the Department of Defense, and he was head of, or he's acting under Secretary of Defense for research and engineering. And so like this guy's been littered all throughout Trump's first administration. He's got Teal connections. He's involved in all the AI stuff. And I had no idea this guy existed. And anytime you get somebody like this, a player like this that comes up again, it kind of gets to Jimmy's rustling. Like, where's this guy been? What's he been doing? And here you go. Like, this guy is the AI, the godfather of AI within the Trump administration. And nobody's ever heard of him before. And he's talking about bending space and time. This guy's well connected. I don't know. So if you have any thoughts on that, that's fine. If not, we can just move on. But
no, this is fascinating. If you want to share my screen, there's these people are everywhere. These guys are all over the place who played very significant roles in Trump 1.0 and are now back to Trump 2.0 and are in front of a television camera, like saying very significant things. And the one who comes to mind for me is Adam Bowler, who played a big part in the Abraham Accords, putting the Abraham Accords together. This is Jared Kushner's college roommate, it sounds like, from what it says here. He, and most notably, during COVID, it says, Bowler was a founding board member of Operation Warp Speed. On May 14th, 2020, the President of the United States signed an executive order delegating Defense Production Act authorities to Bowler, underwriting the production of various vaccines under consideration in advance of the Food and Drug Administration's approval to expand domestic vaccine supply. So this guy literally was one of the founders of Operation Warp Speed, which we have our own theories about what that actually means. And he's the guy who I'd mentioned went out weeks ago, went on Jake Tapper's show and called Hamas really nice guys like twice in like a 2-minute span, and like went and met face to face with Hamas and pissed off Netanyahu and all Netanyahu's cabinet. And I mean, by the way, this guy's Jewish. I feel like that's worth noting. I mean, so he's walking into the room with all the Israeli leaders and basically like thumbing his nose at them and being like, yeah, we're going to go meet with Hamas face to face because we actually want to get this done. Versus, just allowing this to drag out forever and forever. So I don't know. I mean, it seems very significant to me that these people, we didn't even know who these people were, but this guy was delegated all the authority under the Defense Production Act in 2020, and we didn't even know who he was back then.
Yeah, and that reminds me of a guy we talked about this last Saturday. This Stephen Moran. I'm going to share my screen. He's the guy who wrote this paper about. And it's basically a roadmap for what Trump is doing right now with tariffs. This guy, let me pull up his Wikipedia too, Stephen Moran, because he is currently in the Trump administration. He is the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors right now. And if you look back to what he was doing during COVID, Operation Warp Speed timeframe, he was he served as senior advisor for economic policy at the U.S. Department of Treasury, where he assisted with fiscal policy during the pandemic recession. So he was part of the whole bringing the Fed into the Treasury or whatever, Treasury into the Fed, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And those special purpose vehicles that were all created for all the loans. I mean, this guy's connected too. And he basically outlined this whole roadmap. And now this reminds me of, I was talking about this on Monday's show. Have you seen this article where Bessent, before he became the Secretary of Treasury, this is back in October. Let me pull up the archive link. He was talking about a shadow.
Hey, I'm getting it's breaking up for me. I'm gonna back out and come back in.
Okay. Come on now. Might be my internet. I'm going to pause it. One nice thing about pre-recording, now that we're back live again, is we can pause it when we have issues. And that's what we just had. But now we're good. So this article, what we just talked about, those players that like were kind of behind the scenes and, didn't know that Steve Moran having to do with the economic roadmap. I think another nugget that was missed back in October, this is before the election. This is from Bessent. He did an interview and he talks about a plan to sideline Powell. And the whole point of the plan is it's a proposal to get the Senate confirmation of Powell's replacement a year before Powell's term ends. And what that would do is create two people, one person that's there in the short term, Powell, allowing him to finish out his term. But then this other guy would be there and he would be making statements or whatever, talking about stuff long term. And what that does is like it creates this, people would be forced, the markets would be forced, banks would be forced to plan for things based on what this guy is saying on long-term issues. You know what I mean? And I think there's even a quote in here about this, if I can find it. I had it all highlighted. I don't know why it's not now, but on a short-term basis, Powell would call the shots, but everybody would be looking at the calendar to see when Powell is out and would have to factor in that monetary policy. It would take a significant turn. But then the interesting thing here, and then we'll go to the final subject, unless you have any comments, is it talks about tariffs and some of the things we're seeing playing out right now, which is, again, why I think it's so interesting that Stephen Moran, all these other people, and laying out like the roadmap prior to them being in office. Where is it at? Okay, right here. Besson has a nuanced view of Trump's idea for across-the-border tariffs on all countries, which he sees primarily as a negotiating position, which is exactly what we're seeing right now. But he's all in for tariffs on China, which Trump has said could rise to 60%. And he talked about it. So this is on my social medias. I'd encourage you guys to go watch. But do you have anything you want to say or add to this? Otherwise, we'll keep going.
Yeah, it's just funny. I just saw that Trump was teasing putting a 245% tariff on China, and I saw Mr. Wonderful the other day went on CNBC and said I think we should. No. What's his name? The guy from Shark Tank. I forget his name. It'll come back to me in a minute. But he went on there and said we should do a 400%. He's like, I think we should do a 400%. Like, let's stop playing around and just do a 400% tariff. Kevin? He said these guys don't play by the rules. Like, we need to, really take it to them. And he's a Canadian, by the way. He's not even American.
Kevin O'Leary, right?
Yeah, Kevin O'Leary. That's it.
Yep. Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I would love to see it.
He's a Canadian, man, but he can play for me any day.
Yeah. Even in this article, one last thing, something we talked about before is the global economy might need to shift to a model where the lowest tariffs are among free market economies. We talked on a Power Hour when I was in Nashville a couple of weeks ago about how what if the goal is to get to nobody has tariffs, like tariffs don't exist anymore. It's kind of a point he's making here. Anyway, last story that I want to get into is this one having to do with the Defense Digital Service. The Pentagon's tech team resigns en masse under pressure from DOJ. Nearly the entire staff of the Defense Digital Service, DDS, the Pentagon's Rapid Response Tech Unit, is resigning by the end of April following pressure from the Elon Musk-led Department of Government Efficiency. The resignations will effectively shutter the decade-old office with its functions to be absorbed by the Pentagon's Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office. It was created in 2015. It was known for fast-tracking tech solutions during national security crises, developing tools during the Afghan withdrawal, supporting aid delivery to Ukraine, building drone destruction systems, all sorts of stuff. Created by Obama, by the way. The reason that this is interesting is because this is the group of people that, if you remember back in 2021, there was a story that ended up coming out where our Department of Defense transferred all these IP addresses offsite. 175 million IP addresses went to this group, the Global Resource Systems, and nobody knew why. It was 3 minutes before Biden's term ended, or Trump's term ended and Biden's began. So it was technically under the Trump administration, but it was the Defense Digital Service that pulled this off. They're the ones who did this. They sent it out and then they received it back. Do you remember this story?
No, I don't remember this.
You don't?
No, I don't think so.
Oh man, this might have been before you came on then.
Yeah.
But it was such a fascinating story. Like, why did they do this? What was the point? And so the fact they're gone is, I wanted to talk about it because it was just a good reminder of this story. And it brought me back to this, I'm not even sure what this website is. The Optimistic Conservative. Is this, hold on. Is this J.E. Dyer? This might be J.E. Dyer.
I'm not
but
sure.
I can't be certain.
The optimistic conservative. Am I familiar?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's J.E. Dyer. I think that's her, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But I want to read through a couple of pieces of this because it's just good background on what happened. And she talks about my series in here, which I think is cool too. And this is back in 2021, I believe. Anyway, in an earlier article, after John Durham's indictment of Michael Sussman, and by the way, feel free to like interrupt me at any point. I noted that the millions of Pentagon-held IP addresses that were turned over in January of 2021 to an obscure company in Florida had reverted to Pentagon stewardship the week before news of the indictment came out. So they sent these IP addresses off. When they came back, that it was a week before the Sussman indictment came out. On September 10th of 2021, the Washington Post reported that the IP addresses had been turned back over to the Department of Defense on 7 September. That was the Tuesday of the week before the Sussman indictment. The Post cited a brief notice from DOD on the matter, which was of interest given that there was no contemporaneous Pentagon announcement back on January 20th when they were transferred out to this global resource systems. The company, seemingly a sole proprietorship, headquartered in Plantation, Florida. As a reminder, the January 20 transfer was obviously done on President Biden's inauguration day and took place a few seconds after 11:57 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, under 3 minutes before his term officially began. Outside of the most closely engaged in this arcane corner of the cyber world, no one even knew about it until it got public attention in April when they came back. Or sorry, until April of 2021, like 2 months later. They didn't come back at that point yet. There's a whole bunch of other stuff here talking about Rodney Jaffe and all these other things. It's important to keep straight as we ponder why Raymond Celino, that's the guy who owns the global resource systems, was given custody of the Pentagon's IP addresses from 20 January to 7 September. I hate when they do dates like this, the number first.
Yeah.
Anyway.
European.
Yeah, as discussed in my article from April, the funding of Celino's enterprise tracked in part to Chicago investors who ran the same circles as Barack Obama and his associates. We also reviewed the Obama connections of the DoD entity that honchoed the IP address shift, the Defense Digital Service. The DDS was created by Obama in November of 2015, and its leadership not only comes straight out of the Obama Community Organizing Playbook, but out of Rahm Emanuel's Chicago city government. So it seems like a deep state entity. Right.
For sure. Especially if Rahm Emanuel was involved. Yeah.
Yeah. And then she talks about, with that in mind, the ping. I ran across this in perusing the Substack series posted by Patel Patriot. As a brief note before continuing, she doesn't necessarily agree. She will say it was done with, I'm not going to speak in detail. That's a general statement. There will be no forthcoming reviews, but I will say that I think the work was done with laudable care. As long-term readers know, I've written at length about some of the topics covered. She doesn't dismiss it, but she doesn't necessarily agree with it, whatever. But this is where it gets interesting. The timeline she gets into here. Global Resource Systems, LLC, with Raymond Celino as the company principal, was incorporated in Delaware. And then September 10th, the Federal Register Notice of Executive Order 13848 was filed. January 20th, the first and only transaction involving Global Resource Systems. So their whole existence was for these IP addresses. That's what's weird. They shifted back to the Pentagon in September, and then shortly thereafter, EO 13848 was reauthorized, like the national emergency under that. The Sussman indictment, and then I want to get to one point. I'm going to skip a couple things because she gets into devolution stuff, and this I completely forgot about this article, and it blew my mind reading back through it. Okay. I'll close with what seems to be an illuminating meta-narrative observation. Consider all of that particular history. Now consider something else Patel Patriot highlighted from the end of Obama's second term, this federal continuity directive, in which a FEMA fleshed out guidance for continuity government based on Obama's latest presidential policy directive. Skip some of the mumbo jumbo. Okay. In retrospect, after 4 years of the federal executive fighting Trump tooth and nail on policy issues, and after Trump published Executive Order 13961 on December 7th, 2020, which revoked portions of PPD 40 and a prior Obama EO, the thought could not but occur that these updates on continuity government may have been live maneuvers rather than mere bureaucratic grass mowing. She again references my articles. Bolstering this thought was a basically incontrovertible point about Obama's last-minute alterations to EO 12333, 333, the Reagan EO that, with its revisions, still governs the handling of sensitive national intelligence that may, among other things, involve the identities of Americans. The changes to 12333, signed out surreptitiously by subordinates, Clapper and Lynch, were timed to institutionalize the Obama agency that had been doing a spy on Americans, be a pattern, blah, blah, blah. I want to get to the good stuff here, so hold for process. Sorry if this is so all over the place. Okay, here we go. Is that what the IP address shift was part of on January 20th? I'm not convinced one way or another, but there's a clue in Patel Patriots Part 13. What has she been talking about? Maybe I should read this. I don't want to. Okay. When the Trump administration undid some of the key provisions of PPD 40 after the 2020 election, and as the presidential transition appeared increasingly inevitable, that action is harder to attribute to mere policy neutral concerns than a revulsion against whatever Obama's apparent intent with PPD 40 was. The same might be said of Obama's decision to completely replace Bush's 43's continuity policy from 2007. 3 presidents in a row have now substantially revised the COG policy of their immediate predecessors. In the last 2 cases, they have taken related actions during the transition period before the new administration came in. It's a big topic, blah, blah, blah. Is that what the IP address shift was part of? I'm not necessarily convinced one way or the other, but here there's a clue. There's a clue in Patel Patriots Part 13 and its discussion of another Obama order on COG, 13618. We're getting interesting here. That order was about communications during a national emergency. The Obama EO named the president's Homeland Security and Counterterrorism Advisor and Director of White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, which we just discussed, that Krastios guy, as the very small team that would make recommendations to the president and monitor the execution of national communications authorities, in particular those relating to secure communications for the federal government in the event of emergency COG situation. The Homeland Security Advisor would effectively be put at the summit just under POTUS. Within agencies, there would be representatives for communication issues, basically cutting the red tape, which goes into that. The executive committee was vested with the communications responsibilities, and then hold for processing. I want to get to the point where she talks about, I think I ran out of time to start continue highlighting. But she basically makes the point here that it does appear, or it could be possible, that the transition of these IP addresses out of here was for secure communication of the COG team. Okay, and that's kind of the point I'm trying to make here. And that's the point I made way back when in that article, is there's some interesting things going on. Why would these transferred out? We never got an explanation. Was it for secure communications? But then to bring it all back full circle, is the fact that they're getting rid of this agency now, and it's a weird agency to be doing that anyway in the first place, transferring those out. But is that a signal, a further signal to like some COG stuff being done? Like we're at a conclusion point,
like tying up loose ends almost.
Yeah, with 13961, Trump effectively removed the wedge as a drag on managing DoD's communications role in COG situations. Makes for an interesting perspective on the IP address shift, which I assume to have been done by actors loyal to the incoming Biden administration. Food for thought. Was it actually the Trump guys? It's just interesting that they're getting rid of this agency altogether, and reminds me of that story. I wanted to go through this, and I'll post this maybe in the description of this show so you guys can read through it for yourself, because she does a really good job of walking people through it. And I didn't want to take the time to read it all in detail because I know like it's boring.
Yeah.
But it does see, like we had Biden on the very last day before Trump came back in, the day before Trump's inauguration, he partially revoked pieces of that executive order 13961. And I wonder if that has to do with this too. Like there's multiple ways you can connect this agency being removed to some devolution related stuff. And so I'm not even claiming to fully understand it. I don't think anybody really can, but it's notable and it's interesting.
Yeah. So it sounds like what she's arguing or suggesting maybe is that the transfer like 3 minutes before Biden becomes president was done by the Biden administration. That's what she's arguing. Is that potentially this was done by subversive actors in.
Well, I think in her first article, because this is the second of 2 articles, and I think in the first one she kind of makes that point because that Raymond Salino from whatever who received the addresses is Obama connected, and then the agency that transferred them also Obama connected. But then she's going through my article and talking about like, well, maybe there is something else here, and maybe it wasn't Biden connected. That's the point of this article. Her first point in the first article was, yeah, this seems like a deep state move for some reason. We don't know why. But then in here, she's kind of examining the thought of, well, maybe it was continuity related. Maybe it was a Trump move. Maybe there's something more here that we don't understand, and the timing of it, so she kind of argues both points. And I think both are worth examining because we don't know the details of what went on here. But now that agency's gone.
Yeah. No, that's actually fascinating, and who knows which one it is. I think arguments can be made for both, and both avenues, I think, have merit and fit into the devolution theory. It just makes me think of it's funny that in the other article, the first article that you cited, they called them the SWAT team of nerds. Because now I feel like the Doge guys supersede that, and it's like, if y'all are the SWAT team, then these guys are like the special forces of nerds, right? I mean, these are like the autists. Sure. Yeah, so it's funny that they are coming in and cleaning up the SWAT team of nerds, which were created by Obama. But it also reminds me, I mean, this, in my opinion, I'll share my screen real quick. This identical storyline that is the stuff that I've been tracking, where Executive Order 13818. Which was freezing the assets of people involved in human trafficking, December of 2017. Yeah, of course. But Trump puts sanctions on this guy, Dan Gertler, who I've explained him many, many times on DPH and other shows. But what was interesting is that 5 days before Trump leaves office, Ron Dermer, who is, at the time, he was the Israeli ambassador to the U.S. Now he's the secretary or the minister for strategic affairs. So he accompanies Netanyahu when Netanyahu goes to Mar-a-Lago and meets with Trump, or goes to the White House. He's sitting there on the couch next to Rubio, or across from Rubio, in the Oval Office. But what ends up happening is that they reverse these sanctions 5 days before Trump leaves office. And everyone was like, what the hell? Everyone's like, what the hell? Like obviously these guys must be in bed with Trump. Well, a month later or 6 weeks later, Janet Yellen, of all people, during the Biden administration, reimposes, like it says right here, that Janet Yellen, Biden's Treasury Secretary, revoked the license this month, saying it was inconsistent with U.S. goals of fighting corruption and promoting stability in the Congo, a mineral-rich country that is one of the poorest in Africa. So March of 2021, I mean, the media was obviously hyper-focused on J6, in the weeks after Biden comes into office, but eventually they report on it, and then Janet Yellen says, well, wait a minute, that's not right. We got to reverse that. She reimposes Trump sanctions so it always made me wonder, well, maybe the reversal by Ron Dermer and Yossi Cohen was not something that Trump actually wanted to happen. They were just working back channels in the State Department to subvert, Trump's intent. And then, of course, Janet Yellen, who has done a lot of other things that make me scratch my head and think, well, that seems a little devolution-y. Goes and reimposes it. So it just reminded me of that. But I think, to your point on the DDS story or the IP story, it could go either way. I could see it being they sent the things over in order to preserve communications, or they sent them over there in order to
hide evidence. Who knows?
Hide evidence. Yeah, hide evidence. But yeah, it's weird that it happened on technically happened on Trump's watch and not Biden's watch. So that's a weird one, but very, very interesting.
Yeah, we never got a full accounting of what the purpose of that was for. That we just got boilerplate, explanations. But anyway, definitely an interesting story, and reminded of that with the removal of that agency. So anyway, man, I think we're gonna wrap it up here. Again, we would read rants, and we appreciate any rants that came through, but because this is pre-recorded, we're not gonna be doing that. Hit the thumbs up. We'd greatly appreciate that. And any closing thoughts? Otherwise, we'll get out of here.
No, I think it's been interesting conversation. Lots to chew on and think about. So
yeah, lots going on. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We will see you next time we see you.
Appreciate you having me, man.
Yep. Take care.
Yep.